Now, part of what I hear a lot about is, well, how much is all this going to cost me? If I'm going to do it, if I should hire somebody, what do you think the anticipated cost is going to be if I do it myself? You know, is that advisable? What are the sort of do's and don'ts, if you will, of this whole process? Well, if the first thing we want to look at is what is the actual anticipated cost for the 501c3 itself. Actually, these numbers have changed, and when we look at the, we say here the anticipated cost for the state filing is about $100 to $150. That is the actual range. Certainly in California, Texas, and many of the southern states, for some reason, the filings are a bit higher. D.C. area. But the federal application fee is the same across the states. Now, as we said, most organizations that acquire 501c3 tax exempt do so by filing the 1023. Now, as of January the 3rd, 2010, the filing rate increased. If your gross receipts for the organization are expected to average $10,000 or more, your fee is $850, not $750. If your gross receipts are expected to average less than $10,000, the filing fee is reduced to $400 and not $300 as of January 3rd, 2010. Now, when you look at the anticipated time investment in preparation of the 501c3, we're looking at 60+ hours. In responding to IRS queries, 1 to 5 hours, IRS application review, 12 hours. Now, you say, is all that really necessary? Well, when you look at the actual general information or contact information on the application itself, there's quite a bit of information that's going to be required. And they're going to be looking at things like, what is your organization's purpose? Is it religious, charitable, education? List 3 goals of your organization. And then the board members, those responsible for the organizational oversight. Please list the officers' names, their positions. And it's recommended that you have at least 3 to 7 board members when you submit your application. Now, what are some of the material that's going to be required? You're going to need to have a copy of your articles and your bylaws. You're going to need to have your actual financial data, either income statement or recent balance sheet. They're going to ask you for a 2 years projected budget showing both expected sources and income and anticipated expenses. They're going to ask you for printed material describing the history of your organization. There's a lot of information that they're going to ask of you. Now, the whole purpose of all of this is, number one, to be as detailed as possible. And of course, their goal, once they get the application and your money, is to discourage you, because they're getting a lot of applicants, and there's a tremendous waiting list. But they still are able to get. It's going to take 6 to 9 months for the most part, to get them to finalize your application. But here are some of the required skills, as we see: the ability to navigate documents and process, and the ability to respond to IRS promptly. Now, if you're able to navigate through this process comfortably, either because you have the aptitude, the abilities, and you understand this whole process, or you have a board that is very, very helpful, and either you may have someone who's an attorney, or someone who's a legal advisor, or someone who is a consultant has done this and can do this, then your only cost you're looking at is the actual fee itself, which is $850 if you're anticipating $10,000 of gross revenues, or less if not. Okay? So let's continue. if you hire a professional, what are you going to be looking at, and why is that going to be necessary? Well, certainly if your strategic plan, your budget plan shows that you're going to be doing a lot of activity, and part of it you may want to anticipate having a consultant or a professional person to help you process through this. Certainly if you're going to set up a nonprofit organization that is going to be a community development corporation that's going to be doing other things beyond social service. You're going to be doing things in community development. You may be doing some actual development. You may want to develop houses. You may want to do an assisted living. You may want to do an independent living. You may want to do some commercial development along the lines of economic revitalization. And so the more complex your anticipated CDC or nonprofit, the more you want to have someone in there who's going to help you to state your case so that they are comfortable with giving you a successful response. Now, given the depth of what may be needed, you're looking at an anticipated cost between $2,500 to $4,000. I have seen it higher, but then again, you know, that certainly isn't intended to intimidate you by no means, but certainly if your organization is well thought out, you can see that these anticipated costs will be certainly worth your effort, not just by getting the 501c3, but by getting the needed funding that is out there. And there is a lot of dollars on the table. Matter of fact, one of the things that we do know is that every year, the major organizations are challenged in giving out their funds. They're just hard finding individuals that can meet the needs based on the documents that they're presented, that's being presented to them. Now, what are some of the anticipated time investments? Communication with professionals. You're going to be talking to an IRS representative who is going to be very specific, and they're looking for a timely response. The information that they're requesting, they're looking to get a sense of the professionalism that is being truly reflected in the organization. So your documents are going to be reviewed, and they're going to need to be reviewed by, once they come back to you from the IRS, they're going to be, you want to make sure that your response is going to be prompt and appropriate. And the process itself is going to be 6 to 9 months. So can you speed that up? Possibly. What we do know is that they have a tendency to respond more to those applicants that have actually are filing because they have pending grants. And that's not an unusual scenario. If this is the case, it's been our experience that IRS will respond much more promptly in situations like this, and much more favorably without it being drawn out and laborious. So it's very important to have done your homework, and it's very important that you are actually seeking funds, and to determine if and when you do receive your 501c3, that you're able to take advantage of it by getting the dollars in. So is it worth to hire a professional? Well, we let you make that determination. And the last thing before we get to the questions, I want to kind of just mention a very key aspect about having a 501c3 in terms of who is actually required. Not in terms of that, but who is actually exempt from having to automatically apply for a 501c3 application. Now, there are actually two classes of organizations that automatically are treated as tax exempt under the 501c3. It may come as a shock to some of you. But the first entity that is automatically tax exempt from having to apply for a 501c3 are churches. Churches and their integrated auxiliaries and conventions or associations of churches need not apply for a 501c3. The second group are organizations that are not private foundations and have gross receipts that normally are not more than $5,000. Okay? Now, that information is available in IRS Publication 526. And actually, you can download that publication online to see that. Even though there are a lot of churches, there are a ton of churches, and that automatically are going to apply because they think they have to. The reality is that they do not. So, as you can see, going through the process of getting a 501c3 is extensive, and we certainly recommend it for those organizations that are looking to do program development and social service development, especially if you're classified as a faith-based organization. And if your classification is as such, we strongly would recommend that you spend the invested time and the money to set yourself up properly and to take advantage of the great opportunities financially that are available to you in this wonderful tool that's been provided by the federal government.